Hi, we are Team 1 and we are going to present the results of project planning and execution group assignment number 1. In the next 2 slides, we highlight the key metrics and the key factors that influence the performance of our project completion. The key metrics such as productivity, project completion time, rate of mistakes, and the number of hours worked by the employees are correlated to key factors such as number of employees, their stress level, their skill level, the overtime work, the cost of the project, the level of outsourcing, the project scope, the number of prototypes, and the number of meetings. As we saw in the simulation, each factor will influence positively or negatively the performance of our team. We manage them to maximize the scope and minimize the time spent.
In scenario A, 4 medium-skilled employees were recruited to complete the project. In scenario B, initially 4 medium-high-skilled employees were recruited to complete the project because it had a more complex scope. However, in week 5, when the company lost 4 of its medium-high-skilled employees, 2 high-skilled employees were recruited to replace them. Even though the number of employees had reduced from 4 to 2, the productivity remained the same because the 2 new employees who were hired were of an even higher skill than the initial 4 employees that were lost. When the same number of workers with the same level of skill used in scenario A was used in scenario C, the productivity level was reduced. This is because the scope of scenario C was more complex than that of scenario A. In scenario F, because the scope of the project was a lot more complex than the scope of scenario A, more staff with low level had to be recruited to complete the project. Also, because of the technological advancements required to complete the project in scenario F, weekly status updates were included in the project's plan. Also, 2 prototypes were included in the project plan to ensure that the deliverable was created according to the specifications of the scope.
As we learned from scenario A, we chose to do things differently in our strategy involved, which was based on the knowledge that we learned in scenario A. In scenario B, there was a higher complexity of the scope and an increased skill. So we increased the skill level and meetings. And based on the project objectives, we chose to focus on completing the project as fast as possible and within the scope in hopes of finishing early to redeem some budget. This worked well in the beginning, however, outside forces influenced and therefore cut our workforce, which increased our initial time, but however did cut down cost. For scenario C, same metrics was used to prioritize, and when a competitor sped up their launch date, we decided to focus on this as there was an increased reward in completing on time. This increased the cost severely, however, the project was completing on time and therefore we see it as successful. For scenario F, we tried to stay on budget and time, however realized that this strategy would not work. We increased the skill level and set the budget high in order to complete the project in time, which was successful.
The trade-off learned of the selection of the scope that the project manager must consider to fulfill the company's objectives are based on the competitors, which could affect the cost and time as we saw in the scenario C and F.
For each scenario, the cost of production was usually higher than the normal budget. That's because the cost is directly attached to the number and the skill level as well as outsourcing used.
As for the trade-offs we learned regarding time, we learned that it's influenced by a number of factors such as the number of people, complexity, prototypes, and last but not least, outside influences. A trade-off we saw in the simulation was in scenario C, where the competitor sped up the launch date. We therefore needed to compromise, which came at a cost. Throughout the simulation, we learned a lot about the different factors that influence the project and how it is all linked. We learned about the different trade-offs and how our initial strategy did not always work, and how important it is to stay flexible in the project management field.